Welcome to the Liberty Podcast with Clint Armitage. We are proclaiming liberty one show at a time, and the next one starts right now. Our soldiers died for your freedom. God gave us all rights and never leave them. It's time to step up for your freedom. So rally up now, this is America. Our soldiers died for your freedom. God gave us all rights and never leave them. Now it's time to step up for your freedom. So rally up, this is America. Well. Thanks for coming back again. My name is Clint Armitage with the Liberty Podcast. So we have been in Santa Barbara, and we're still recording in Santa Barbara because I felt that God was calling this podcast, myself, to Santa Barbara. And then also, I believe he called me to do it with a buddy of mine named Dirk Boone, who's been here for multiple podcasts, and we're going to continue to do this. And actually, he's, like I said, he's turned into a guest host. So we'll probably be doing more with him in the future because we're talking about a lot of good stuff, and we're putting out, I think, really good information and getting his insights on stuff, not only from a cop perspective, but also from a spiritual perspective and a believer's perspective. So I think he's got some good stuff to give. And Dirk, I appreciate you coming out again.
Happy to do it.
All right. Okay, so now our topic is liberty, and we're going to see if we can stay within a certain time frame with this topic, but we get to talk a lot here, and we're pretty good at it, at talking.
Yes.
So hopefully you guys can, get all this good information without having to sit here and listen too long. But anyways, either way, I'd like to talk about the topic of liberty, and what I want to do is kind of get your thoughts on liberty as a whole in America right now. What's the state of liberty, in your opinion?
I think that it's being eroded. I think that we have entities that want to make choices for us and allow us to hand over our agency to them so they can make choices for us. And I believe that that's wrong. I think that we have the right and responsibility to make choices when we've been given true and correct principles, and then also to accept the consequences, because I think that's a trend in this country right now, that we want to make choices, but we don't want to accept the consequences of those choices.
Yeah. Now, is that your cop perspective, believer's perspective, or both?
Yeah, I'll be very honest with you. For me, it's kind of, it's weird, but it's the same thing to me, because it's all rolled into one. I am who I am,
right,
and I bring that perspective to the job, but I also have it in. It's difficult to separate because it's who I am. After all these years, it's who I've become.
Okay, so I'm gonna read a kind of a statement here, and then I'll get your thoughts on it here. Okay. There cannot be liberty, and this is me actually. I wrote this. I got portion of it from someone else, but then I added to it. So This is what I got. There cannot be liberty as we know it to be in America without the coexistence of three things: virtue, which is morally good behavior or character.
Right.
Faith, a strong belief or trust in someone or something. And self-governance, having control or rule over oneself,
right,
individual or group. All of which I believe is God-given. And I think that if you remove any one of these from the equation, you will effectively have lost liberty in your society.
Yes, and then you'll create anarchy, right? If you don't have those three guiding principles, if you don't have those things to use as, like when you're a little kid, you put the little bumpers up for bowling.
Yeah.
If you don't have those rails that help you stay on track,
stay in the lane,
you're going to have problems.
Yeah. Well, I know there was a study, and I can't quote it, so it's not going to be like official, but there's that study where they studied kids in playgrounds with fences and kids in playgrounds without fences.
Okay.
And they found that the kids with playing in playgrounds that had no fences, they huddled up more closer to the center, closer in center.
Right.
But then the ones that had fences around were able to spread out and run free all along the playground.
Right.
And that's because they had, in my belief, that's what they had lanes to follow.
Right.
Just like the Bible. It kind of gives us our lanes.
Yeah.
Right. To understand, as long as we understand our policies and procedures at work. If we follow those things, we're protected.
Right.
If we don't follow, if we go outside of those lanes, we're not protected anymore. And so we could feel less protected and there'd be less chance for us to explore and be creative and do what we maybe have been called to do.
Right.
So in terms of liberty, have you gotten pushback? And it could be a cop perspective, could be, believer's perspective, or both. have you gotten any pushback or complete disagreement with your stance regarding the current state of our liberties? Let's say in the cop world, do you get a sense that cops want more stricter things, or do you think that there's been the cops as a whole kind of want liberty for people?
I think police officers as a whole want liberty for people, but they also want accountability. And so what we're starting to see is we're starting to see an increase in liberty where you can do these things, but you're not going to be accountable for them. So with some of the laws on controlled substances, you can use all these controlled substances you want, but you don't have the ill effects because we're going to protect you from those. We're going to enact programs to help feed you and do these things for you.
Right.
You put us in control, and we're going to help. So there's no consequences. Back in the day, right? You arrested somebody for 11.5 or being under the influence of a controlled substance.
Right.
They did 90 days, right? And they didn't want to do that because a lot of times they dry out in county.
And it was accountability, and it was a consequence.
There was accountability, right? Yeah. And there was a consequence for it. What we want in this country anymore is we want liberty without consequence.
Yes.
And that's not how God's laws work.
No. There's always those two sides, liberty versus consequence.
Right.
And so that's the lane. That creates the lane, right? That you can move around freely within that lane.
Right.
And so, for instance, like you're talking about, being under the influence, well, what about Prop 47 and the smash and grabs, right? Massive, huge increase and organized retail theft and smash and grabs, because in California, I'm talking about, not anywhere else, mostly in California. But we're looking at now basically zero consequences if you have stolen under $950 without violence.
Zero consequences for you as
the thief. Right.
As a consumer, our liberties are being curtailed because now we're going to pay more because the retailer's not going to lose the money.
Yeah.
We're going to pay more, and so our dollars that could have been used to do other things are now, and so people don't understand that, right? They don't see that, hey, look, this thing is taking away our freedoms too. They
don't make the connection that even though, the criminal, let's rehabilitate, let's not put them in prison. But what they don't understand is now that there's an increase in these smash and grabs, and every person is stealing $950, $949 worth of stuff, then what's happening is the business owner is losing money. And guess what? Now they have to increase prices because now there's companies that are hiring private security because that's the only way they feel comfortable in keeping the store open so that they won't be robbed during store hours or whatever. So they're hiring security forces. Well, who pays for that?
Right.
The consumers end up paying for that in the prices that they pay. So there's no connection. I think people aren't doing a good job in connecting the fact that, we want to rehabilitate people because that is part of what we need to do as a society is to help rehabilitate.
Well, if we believe in the atonement of Jesus Christ, there's remission of sins, right?
Yeah. And there's consequences involved in decision making, especially bad decision making. You have to have a consequence. When you remove the consequence from bad decision making, assuming that the behavior is going to change is just a false reality.
Right.
I think it's immature and it's naive to believe that you can change people without accountability and without consequence.
Right.
But that's where we're going, right?
And that's not how God does things, right?
Right.
We have mercy. And we have accountability, right? But we have justice. So we have mercy and justice,
right?
And those are the scales.
That's the scales, right? Mercy and justice, and that's how it should be. And that's how it was. That's how our criminal justice system was founded. It was founded on mercy and justice
and trying to help people, right? I mean, back in the old days of the penitentiary. They had low recidivism rates because people were like, "Dude, I don't want to do this.
Right.
I'm going to reform, a reformatory, right?" And we said, okay, well, there is a stiff consequence. Now, were some of them overly stiff? I'm sure, yes. I'm not saying it was a perfect system.
Right.
It's a system created by humans, right? Trying to rehabilitate people. But, we can't have in this country liberty without accountability, and that's what we're trying to have.
And that's the problem. Again, it's this naive thinking that you can remove accountability and still get behavioral change.
Right.
Thinking that that's the nicer side of people, or that's the nicer way to do it, and you'll be able to do it. And it's more of it's a misconception to believe that people will change by throwing money at them. Right. Like the recently proposed, the proposed bill or whatever that was coming out of San Francisco, right? An organization, nonprofit, wanted to start giving people, criminals, $500 up to $500 a month not to shoot somebody.
Okay.
So you can learn minimum $300 a month, but you can earn maximum of $500 a month if you don't shoot anybody.
Okay.
And you can earn that. So we're going to throw money at you to stop hurting other people.
Yeah, and so you're incentivizing things the wrong
Yeah,
way. You're
incentivize.
not, and I guess that's what God's plan is, to help us learn and to grow, and to at a point that we've grown so much that we don't have a disposition to do evil anymore. We don't want to, because we
Yeah.
want to do good things.
Right.
But this isn't helping people grow. You're just keeping them from doing bad things, not because they don't want to do bad things, but because we're incentivizing not doing bad things.
Right.
And there's no learning there. That's not the way God's laws work.
And just like the recently elected DA in New York City or whatever, I don't even remember his name, but supposedly, and I can only go off of what I've heard and read on the news and all that, but supposedly he is not going to be charging felonies for armed robberies as long as there was no actual violent action, even though armed robbery in itself is defined as a violent action. But as long as they didn't shoot anybody on that armed robbery, then it's a misdemeanor. It's going to be charged as a misdemeanor.
So whose liberty gets usurped there? At the end of the day, the unfortunate victims
Right.
of those crimes, their liberties are being usurped.
Yes.
And the sad thing is that we're willing to take away liberty from good people,
Right.
who did nothing more than go to the liquor store. I've handled a case like that where a young man, he was carjacked. And I asked him, what's the last seen effects? He says, I never go into that store anymore, and I'm always looking over my shoulder. And really, I try not to go out in the evening either, because I don't want to get in a situation like that. This poor guy,
So he's actually in a little bit of a prison.
yes,
Yeah.
a self-imposed prison that was a result of the unrighteous use of agency
Yeah.
on the part of another person. So if we don't punish that person
Right.
for usurping liberty from
For
this
this other one.
decent person, then we're all in bondage.
Yeah.
Because this person on the other side who committed the armed robbery has never been given the catalyst to repent and to change
Right.
and to say, you know what, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I want to do something different. I want to apply the atoning blood of Jesus Christ on this thing. I
Yeah.
want to make a restitution as much as I can. And I want to do the right things,
Yeah.
because we're robbing him of that opportunity too.
Right.
And when that happens, then Satan has won.
And that's the thing. Okay, so and I'm glad you're putting this into a spiritual sense, because when I was talking about it, I was talking more of a kind of physical, earthly sense, but bringing in the spiritual realm here, which is good. What do you think an individual believer's stance should be? What do you think the church should do in regards to laws like this, or people that are getting elected like that? What's your take?
I think what individual believers need to do is they need to study out the candidates. They need to find the person who best represents their beliefs and the things that they believe and the things that they would like, and then try to elect those people. And then if they get elected, then thumbs up, and we're going to move forward, evaluate how they're doing.
And then, evaluate and hold them accountable. to what they said.
But if your guy didn't win, it's okay to disagree
Right.
without being disagreeable.
Yeah.
And next election cycle, we're not trying to usurp liberty and say,
Right.
well, this didn't go down the way that I wanted it to, and
Right.
we're gonna fight and do all these other things. We can do it within the system, and it's our responsibility to do so.
Yeah, and good. I agree. I think it is an individual responsibility, and I think it's a group responsibility in terms of being Americans. That's kind of our duty, right?
Right.
But to guide this nation and where it should go, because it is we the people. I think we're going away from that, which is a problem. But I also think that people aren't acting in their duty.
Right.
As Americans, and when you go back to being a believer, I think believers have a responsibility to act as well, because you can't just go around saying, well, no, I just want to spread the gospel. I'm not going to stay out of that. I'm going to stay out of that realm. Well, what you're effectively doing is allowing Satan to gain more ground in an area that you have been given the opportunity to make a difference in for God.
All it takes for evil to prevail is for good men to do nothing, right?
And that's what I see. I see a lot of the church, and this is just a general, generalization here. I see a lot of the church as a whole, as individual believers, not doing their part in this area because of a feeling of, hey, I'm just here to, I'm not here to make waves. I'm just here to spread the gospel and tell people about Jesus. And I think that's fine. However, there's a way to do that in terms of your ability, opportunity, and even duty as an American citizen. Because you are a citizen of two places, citizen of America and citizen of the kingdom of heaven.
Right.
And so you have responsibility in two places. Now, I think the kingdom of heaven will usurp and be more, if you had to make a decision between the two, then you always choose what I like the term that I've heard that I actually use now is, if you have a choice between two, pick eternal.
Right.
I love that.
Yeah, well, you should only worry about really the things that have eternal consequences, right? Does it matter that my kid has a red bike or a blue bike? No. Does it matter that we spend time with my kid on the bike?
Yeah.
As dad and child?
Yeah.
That has the eternal consequences,
Right.
because he can't take that red bike with him,
Yeah.
but he can take the experiences with his dad with him.
Right. So
And that's
always pick eternal.
Right.
Always pick eternal. And so I think the church, the church has a responsibility in terms of just letting believers know that they have the right, they have the ability to make a choice and actually act on that.
And you should make a choice.
And you should.
And I've been remiss about that too. When I worked major crimes, I stopped watching the news because I got enough bad news
Yeah.
every single day.
Right.
And I've kind of checked out a little bit. And
Yeah.
this is even a call, you and I talking is a call to be a little bit more. And guys, the big things, the most important things, we're talking about our city councils. We're talking about the local law enforcement. We're talking about local leadership who have the ability to change the things in your direct sphere.
Yeah.
That's your direct sphere of influence. It's like dropping the pebble in. Those
Yeah.
are the first ripples right around
Right.
you. And to help people know that we want good people, we want people to do things, we need to stop being a silent majority.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
we need to say, we're going to hold you accountable,
Yeah.
because ultimately the government shouldn't tell us what to do. We should tell the government what to do.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. So I appreciate your input on that. And yeah, so church believers, I think everybody should start getting off the sidelines, getting off the bench, and actually get in the game. Because we do have a responsibility as duties as a citizen of the United States and a citizen of the kingdom, and always picking eternal though, but actually acting on our beliefs and our convictions. That's what I think the church has to get back to. That's what I think believers have to get back to. That's what I think American citizens have to get back to. So we have to keep enjoying our liberties by keep on the fight for our liberties, and that's the way you're going to do it. So, anyways, thanks for coming by, Dirk. I appreciate your time. And do you have any last thing to say?
And just remember, when they're chipping on somebody else's liberties, you need to stand up for them too, because they're going to come chipping on your liberties next.
That's right. So liberty as a whole, which is what America is found on.
Right.
Keep fighting for liberty. Keep seeking for liberty. And I appreciate you guys coming by and listening. We'll do more podcasts where Dirk will be a guest host, and we'll do a lot more talking, because we like to talk, obviously, if you haven't noticed already.
It's like it's our job.
So anyways, thanks for coming by. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, stay motivated, and keep seeking liberty.
Our soldiers died for your freedom. God gave us all rights and never leave them. It's time to step up for your freedom. So rally up now, this is America. Our soldiers died for your freedom. God gave us all rights and never leave them. Now it's time to step up for your freedom. So rally up, this is America.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Liberty Podcast with Clint Armitage. If you want to get in touch, email us at info@clintarmitage.com.